Here's what nobody tells you about binge eating. White knuckling it is actually making it worse. Every time you try to use willpower to push your way through, you're actually just reinforcing the same cycle that you're trying to break. So if you've been trying harder and it's not working, it's not a character flaw. You're just using the wrong approach. Hi, my name is Tracy Hull, and I'm a registered dietitian. I work with people with binge eating disorder and binge eating tendencies all the time. And I actually struggle with the same behavior myself at different points in my life. Do you constantly feel out of control around food and keep promising yourself that you're going to start over again tomorrow? Maybe you feel ashamed afterwards and you feel like, I just need more discipline. If you feel like you're out of control around food, this video is definitely for you. Now, I want you to know from the beginning, people with binge eating are not lazy. You are not lazy. It's not a lack of willpower. In fact, I find a lot of my clients who suffer from binge eating are actually trying harder than anybody else. And in other parts of their life may seem perfect, put together, organized, and they feel like, why can't I get this part of my life right? What I've discovered in my practice and in my own personal behaviors is that binge eating tendencies and behaviors are predictable. We can see the pattern. And oftentimes what I help my clients see in the beginning is seeing the pattern backwards. We start with the binge and we work backwards to see what was the trigger, what was the problem that we can fix. It's not the binge that's the problem, although I know you feel like the binge is the problem. You feel like the binge is the thing you want to fix, but the binge is a symptom of something more. Let me tell you a story, and it's gonna get a little bit personal. Back in college, I had already spent many years restricting, and I got into a pretty nasty pattern of binging and then over-exercising to compensate. At the time this was happening, binge eating disorder wasn't even a diagnosed thing. It didn't have a name, but I knew that it didn't feel good, and I knew that it wasn't normal behavior, and it felt shameful, and I couldn't tell anybody, and I was so emotionally distressed about it and embarrassed and full of shame. I remember eating my roommate's food and then panicking and having to replace it or lie about it because I was so embarrassed. And what I would do in order to control my physical appearance was I would restrict, I would drink large amounts of caffeine, and I would excessively over-exercise. Now, it's safe to say I couldn't do this for very long, and it actually escalated over the course of several years. So from the age of 16, I suffered from a lot of restriction. Now looking back on it, I see that I started to binge. I would have this insatiable appetite, and I would eat large amounts of food, larger than what I was used to eating, of course, and I would feel totally out of control. Now, because of my expertise and my practice and my career, I understand that this was actually physiology. My body was trying to get me back to some sort of stable intake and nutritional status so that I could keep up with basic functions. I could have a healthy heart rate, and I could help with cell turnover and maintain my muscle mass and my organ function and my hair growth. But to a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, it felt really shameful and out of control. Now, this somewhat normalized, it didn't really normalize, but it appeared calmer. It felt calmer. I would still have some overeating and some restriction for the next several years, but it wasn't as volatile as it was in that time period where I was going through weight restoration. And mind you, I didn't have a dietitian at the time. I didn't have a therapist. All of this was a secret that I kept silent. So by the time I went to college, anxiety actually stepped in more significantly. It probably was present before, but it certainly took over. And this is where I found running and exercise to manage my anxiety and some of my separation. I was a long way from home. I was a long way from the person that I was dating at the time. I was 8 hours away from anybody that I knew. And it was very distressing. And I didn't know how to emotionally deal with that. So how did I deal with that? With restriction, exercise, and food. And over the course of the next couple years, I started to binge and exercise and restrict and binge and exercise and restrict over and over again. I remember binging at least once daily, every single day, for probably months on end. It was very shameful, full of shame, full of guilt, and I didn't share it with anybody. Nobody knew. It all came to a head when I injured myself. I couldn't run anymore. And the panic welled up inside of me. I couldn't control this. I couldn't hide this anymore. I needed help because the binging would still be there and I could no longer compensate for it. At that time, I was very fortunate to be able to see a dietitian in student health at the college I was attending. I got in to see a therapist and I saw a psychiatrist. And the ironic part is I was in school to be a dietitian at the time. And that, of course, a lot of dietitians, a lot of us deal with disordered eating or we deal with body image. And that is why we get into the field in the first place. So I was able to get professional help to get out of this or to work through things. I know so much now, fast forwarding close to 20 years later, than I knew then. And the field has come a long way too. There's actually a binge eating disorder diagnosis. And I realize now what I was suffering from before was more in the realm of exercise bulimia. And that helps me to understand the mechanisms of what triggers this. The binge is a symptom of something more. The binging was a symptom of anxiety, restriction, over-exercising, depression, loneliness, lack of sleep, feeling like I wasn't good enough. The list goes on and on. And if you don't deal with at least some of those things, you're probably not going to make much headway with the binge eating itself. You are trying to soothe pain that you have inside or inadequate nutrition. You're not eating enough, and the restriction alone is leading you to binge. You're not dealing with that. And so you're going to remain stuck in this cycle. Chronic dieting is the same thing. So you don't even actually have to be full-fledged into restriction. You could even just have the mindset of, Monday I'm going on a diet, I'm going to be really well behaved. These are all the things I'm going to do, and that's restriction. And your brain goes, nope, we can't do that. No. And your anxiety goes up and you go, Last Supper, I have to overeat all the way up until Monday, because I'm not going to be able to eat these foods again, because I don't know when I'm going to be able to eat these foods again. I have to get it in now, because Monday I'm starting over. That's going to trigger a binge eating behavior, emotional eating, guilt, shame, restriction, and the cycle begins all over again. Let's back up into the restrict-binge cycle. It's not just that starvation, significant restriction, or what you don't even think is significant restriction, dieting triggers a binge. It's also things like skipping a meal, not eating all day until the evening time, cutting out foods or whole food groups. The mentality of I'm going to try to eat as little as possible, which then results in feeling like you're overeating or binge eating later in the day because your body needs fuel. Trying to eat as little as possible throughout the day. We all know that backfires. You can't do it. It's not healthy for you. Cutting out whole food groups and guilt around food choices, amounts of food, body shame, guilt about your own body, your own behaviors, or even guilt and shame about other parts of you. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to succeed at anything. I made this mistake and I should be ashamed of it. All of those things can lead to binges or what feels like a binge. Here's the thing. Chronic dieting and restriction trigger hunger, food focus, food noise, food obsession, cravings, more reward-seeking, dopamine-seeking behavior or dopamine-seeking through food, and overall emotional intensity around food. Helps you to feel more out of control around food. Your body is not interpreting chronic restriction and restraint as self-improvement. It's interpreting it as a threat, and a binge is often a survival response to deprivation. So why is nighttime the hardest? Oftentimes I'll hear my clients say, I do great all day long, and then when I get home, it is all bets are off. I'm going straight to the fridge or I'm hitting the grocery store on my way home. I can't contain myself. What is it about the nighttime? I just need to put the kitchen off limits. I just need to go to bed early, back up, and look at earlier in the day. Remember I mentioned trying to eat as little as possible throughout the day? The other thing is feeling like I'm being good all day long and then I binge at night. Likely you're being good is mental restriction and also too much caloric restriction. Maybe you're not getting enough protein or certain nutrients, and it's probably a combination of both. The solution comes down to fueling your body consistently throughout the day and giving yourself what you need throughout the day And that nighttime binge and overeat reduces, becomes less, and may even stop altogether. Honestly, binge eating may not be happening at night because you're weak. It's happening because you've ignored your body all day long and tried to be on your best behavior with distraction, and you come home exhausted. Maybe you're drinking a lot of fluid throughout the day and you're caffeinated up. And then by the end of the day, you're exhausted, you're being hit with your kids, you're stressed out, you're tired, and food's the solution. And it makes you feel better. And then you get hit with guilt and shame. The reality is food can become your comfort, your stimulation when you're bored, your relief or escape from the day or from a stressful situation or emotion you don't want to feel. It can be your way to decompress after a long day or a long week. This is why we'll see people during the week on their best behavior, and then over the weekend is a free-for-all. Seeking food for emotional reasons and comfort can be strongly related to things like ADHD, stress, burnout, perfectionism, loneliness, fatigue, emotional fatigue, and to suppress emotions. And you may think, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't drink alcohol. And sometimes food is the only place where you truly feel like you find relief. What I tell a lot of my clients is, it works. Food works. If you're emotionally dysregulated, if you're tired, if you're stressed out, or if you want to just escape the emotions that you're going through, food works. If you're seeking dopamine and you want to feel better, it temporarily works. But it's a Band-Aid to fix a symptom of a deeper problem. Why does shame keep the cycle going? I know. I certainly remember when shame and guilt were so tied to those behaviors. And unfortunately, when you're engaging in the behavior and then you feel shame and guilt and self-loathing afterwards, that only reinforces the next binge cycle. It may reinforce or trigger a feeling of, okay, I need to fix this, I need to undo this, and that may include restriction and or overexercise or clean eating, or I'm going to be good. And that's only going to backfire. It doesn't fix that root cause. This is where sometimes restarting Monday becomes a thing. This ties into the all or nothing thinking as well, where one bad night where you think that you did something wrong and that you were bad turns into this black and white thinking. I'm good, I'm bad, and I have to start over again. With my clients, how we use it is, this is a learning experience. If you never binge, then we don't know why you were binging. If you just white knuckle it through and try not to binge, we're not going to know how to fix it, how to ride it out, how to develop the coping skills in order to not binge. And you're going to be white knuckling it for the rest of your life. That doesn't sound enjoyable. Instead of fixing that root cause, root problem, so the binge doesn't come up, the temptation doesn't come up, the desire doesn't come up every single time you're around tempting food, alone at home by yourself, or driving by a fast food restaurant. What actually helps? How do we reduce the frequency of binging? And that's what I want you to understand. It's not going to be you're engaging in binging and then all of a sudden you stop. You're going to have blips. You're going to have things come up. You're going to have what you consider to be a slip up. And it's just data. It's just information. So how do we reduce the frequency, the intensity, and the need for the binging? Number one, when my clients come into my office, I know this is easier said than done, but I clarify there's no shame or guilt. We can't be shameful or guilty about this behavior because it is feeding us information. It's telling us where we're hurting, and it's usually either a biological or an emotional response to something. And so that brings me to my next point. We feed our bodies regularly and frequently. So not going more than 3 to 5 hours without eating. And when we're eating something with protein, carbohydrates, fats, we're not becoming obsessed with clean foods. To continue off my own story, it's not like I learned how to stop binging and it never happened again. Fast forward about 15 years later, and I found myself binging because of an immense emotionally traumatizing event. And on top of that, I was trying to restrict my fat intake. And I completely lost it and was in the full throes of a binge. And once I realized what was happening, I said, oh, I need to eat fat. In order to feel mentally stable and nourished, I need to eat fat, and I need to see a therapist. I need to get help for this emotional distress and trauma that had happened. Again, I can't say enough, binge eating is a symptom of something. It's a signal that something is off and that you need more care. So eating more consistently, eating a variety of food, not bringing so much black and white to food as good and bad. Food is food. Your body is going to feel safer. It's going to trust you more if you consistently have food available and fuel available for it to do its job and to keep you alive. Reduce the perfectionism. It's not black and white, and that's only reinforcing the cycle. And even if you're not actually restricting your calories, you're going to end up overeating, emotionally eating, or binging because you're feeling emotionally and mentally restricted. Look at things like your sleep, your time with loved ones, or your time with friends, or do you need to seek help from a therapist to help you with emotional distress or emotional tolerance? Are you burnt out, or do you need to establish boundaries in your life so that you can feel more regulated and not use food to regulate? Now, I want to clarify something really quickly. There is a difference between binge eating and occasionally overeating. And there's even a difference between feeling like you're binging because you actually didn't eat enough throughout the day versus binging even though you did eat enough throughout the day. So it's not coming from a biological restriction necessarily. However, with my clients, the biggest step in the beginning is reducing shame and guilt and establishing regular, nourishing meals throughout the day. Occasional overeating is something that we all do. And I will have some clients say, oh, I just binged yesterday. And we'll dive in a little bit and we'll figure out that no, actually that wasn't a binge. That was more of a underfueling and then feeling like you overate and feeling guilt and shame around overeating, but it wasn't actually a binge, which is large, very large amounts of food, feeling emotionally completely disconnected, checked out, immense amount of shame and guilt afterwards. I want to emphasize that you do not need to feel like you hit rock bottom in order to receive support. You deserve to feel supported and you deserve to have help with this emotional distress and emotional distress that you have around food and around eating and feeling like you are out of control. I provide a lot of skills and steps in my Healthy Habits Starter Kit, which is linked in the description box below, that can help you to establish some regular routines that can help to reduce binge eating behavior and to help you feel more confident with the food choices that you're making and how you're taking care of your body. I want you to know that you are not weak, you're not broken. Please stop trying to will your way through binge eating or white knuckling. And if you feel like you're always starting over on Monday, make sure you watch this video next.